Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sara ala sabilihi ila yawmiddin amma ba'd. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be starting to discuss the book Kitab al-Mukhtasar Sahih Bukhari by al-Zubaydi, where last week we had introduction, and today inshallah ta'ala we'll be picking up from where we have left off regarding discussing this book. So in previous lesson we have covered concerning the start of the book, which is the Bid'at al-Wahi, regarding concerning the start of revelation. Then also we cover concerning Kitab al-Iman, and also we ended with Kitab al-Ilm. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be discussing concerning those matters that he mentioned concerning Kitab al-Wudu. So as we mentioned regarding of this book of Sahih Bukhari, that this book is classed amongst those books of the Jawame, of those books that is very inclusive regarding the different topics that are covered within this book. So of those books that are said to be Jawame, where Imam Bukhari rahimahullah and others of this type of book, that they try to incorporate in this book concerning matters that relates to ahkam, regarding concerning halal and haram. Also of the books of Jawame, that include concerning matters concerning Aqidah and Tawheed. Also they include concerning matters concerning akhlaq, wal tafsir, and the likes. So this book, they cover different topics. So we'll be starting to discuss concerning those matters pertaining to ibadat. So and starting with this particular book, Al-Kitab al-Wudu. So we'll be starting regarding discussing these matters to give us some of the main points that relates to some of the ahkam that relates to to this matter. And starting with wudu, regarding, as to be mentioned, that is a preparation for salat, one of those acts that is a part of the preparation for salat. So the author rahimullah started with this particular book. So we'll read the hadith and then we go to some of the points that can be taken. Tafaddal.
Chapter 1, no salah prayer is accepted without ablution, i.e. to remove the small hadath by ablution or the big hadath by taking a bath. Narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the salah, i.e. the prayer of a person who does hadath, passes urine, stool or wind, is not accepted until he performs or repeats the ablution. A person from Hadramaut asked Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, what is hadath? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu replied, hadath means the passing of wind from the back.
So the author rahimahullah, Imam Bukhari, had started this chapter regarding Kitab al-Wudu. But as for the one who make the Mukhtasar, who is al-Zabidi, that also can follow the line of Bukhari. So he give the chapter heading of Bukhari, but also this particular Mukhtasar, or the summary of this book, that what he tries to do, he tries to do away with those ahadith that are said to be mu'allaqa, and only try to rely upon those hadith that is directly upon the Prophet alayhi salam. So anything regarding the Sahabi of the aqwal or hadith which is mu'allaqa and the likes, then he do away with those and I'll just try to stick to only a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salam. So author he mentioned Zubaydi regarding in his Mukhtasar mentioned Bab la tuqbal as-salat bighayri tuhur, that as-salat is not acceptable except with tuhur, regarding purification. Then he mentioned the hadith regarding this particular chapter, where the hadith is mentioned as read, where he listened, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned concerning that, قال عليه السلام لا تقبل الصلاة لا تقبل الصلاة من أحدث حتى يتوضأ. Then he mentioned فقال رجل من أجر موت ما الحدث. So al-hadith. So as for this particular hadith that they mentioned, that this hadith also is narrated by Imam Muslim. This hadith that is narrated by Imam Muslim rahimahullah. So with this hadith, we have a narration from Bukhari and Muslim upon Abu Hurairah anhu. But also you have Imam Muslim also have narrated hadith with some slight difference in the wording of narration of Ibn Umar. So Imam Muslim rahimahullah, he narrate this hadith of those narrations that is with Bukhari, that he coincide with Imam Bukhari, which is the narration of Abu Hurairah. But also there's other narration that is mentioned by Ibn Umar that is with Imam Muslim. The heading that he mentioned, La tuqbal as-salat bighayri tuhur, that's the hadith of Ibn Umar in the Muslim. That hadith is with Ibn Umar in Sahih Muslim, but that particular hadith is not in accordance to the condition of Imam Bukhari. So he did not mention it. But he used the heading or used a portion of the hadith, but he didn't per se use the hadith, as that hadith doesn't conform to his criteria. Then as for what is mentioned regarding the hadith, regarding the fawahid or the benefit of this hadith, that they mention regarding la tuqbal as-salat, that ulama rahimahullah, that they have mentioned, and of the explanation that we're using one, Fathul Bari, we're using also At-Tawdiyah by Ibn Malakkin, and also Aun al-Bari by Ali al-Qari. So Ali al-Qari is book here is actually an explanation of this Muqtasar, but also we're using concerning that we're using concerning other books, which is Fathul Bari, some of the benefits, and also At-Tawdiyah by Ibn Malakki rahimahullah, and these are those who have explained this particular book, Sahih Al-Bukhari, as we mentioned, that many of the ulama have explained Sahih Bukhari, and of recent years we find many of those explanations are being printed. Many of those explanations that are being printed for many years, that the main source of the explanation of Sahih Bukhari was Fathul Bari by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. But of recent years that we have many other explanations have been printed to assist us regarding understanding this book, Al-Fathul Bari, this book, Sahih Bukhari. So as for the author, rahimahullah, I mentioned, and the hadith, La Tuqbal, that they mentioned concerning what is meant by La Tuqbal. So they mentioned La Tujzi, that a person, salat, is not, they say Tujzi, the person that is not valid unless he has tahara. So it mentioned La Tuqbal Salah. One salat is not tuqbal, meaning concerned, is not accepted until the person in a state of tahara. So from this they mentioned that one, it shows regarding that of those things, which is an ijma between the ulama, that salat is not accepted and valid until the person in a state of tahara. So one of those conditions, or one of those things, components for a person's salat to be considered to be valid, is the person should be in a state of tahara. Then they mention regarding concerning that, as we mentioned, as-salah, la tuqbal as-salah, and also la tuqbal as-salat, it means concern the person who prays and is not in a state of tahara, then that person's salat is not considered to be sahih, valid. And also the person who prays not in a state of tahara, also the person required to repeat his salah. So the person who prays without tahara, then that person is required then to repeat his salah, as the salat is not valid, and he hasn't completed the salat in the manner prescribed. He has not completed the salat in the manner prescribed according to the Sharia. Then it mentioned salah nakira. What they mentioned concerned that inclusive of all the salah that starts with Allahu Akbar takbir and end with taslim. So no salat is valid until the person is in a state of tahara, and this will include any salat, as mentioned here, salah, that means salat in the sense of salat that requires, that's start with a takbir, Allahu Akbar, and end with taslim. So that's concerning whether it is nafila or farida. So any salat, so they mentioned concerning you have those salat, such as as-salat al-janaza, as-salat al-janaza, it doesn't consist of sujood or ruku, but it starts with Allahu Akbar takbir and end with taslim. So that also requires the person to be in a state of tahara for it to be deemed valid. So any salah, so this hadith applies to any salah that requires, that begins with takbir and end with taslim, then this hadith applies to all these salawat. As for example, they mention sujood as-sahu or sujood at-tilawa outside the salah. Sujood at-tilawa outside the salah. Sujood at-tilawa, the person praying, or the person reading the Quran, and there are certain points, if the person was to read those particular passages in the Quran or ayat, then the person is required to make sujood, referred to as sujood at-tilawa. The discussion between the ulama that this sujood is said to be salah, and does the person required to be, does the rules of salat applies to it. But aqwal, the more as to be discussed, the more correct view that it is not salah, and the person is not a requirement, but the person should be in a state of wudu or tahara. Then it mentioned, as we mentioned, all salat that start, as we mentioned, with takbir and end with taslim. They mentioned man ahdatha. Al-ahdath, they mentioned concerning that is those things concerning nawaqid al-wudu. Those things that will naqd al-wudu, that will make the person wudu invalid. This is what is intended. And those things are various things and to be discussed. So regarding concern the person that if he finds himself in a state of hadath, of the person of past, of broken his wudu, the person cannot pray until, or salat is not, a person cannot pray until he's in a state of tahara. As for hadath, the hadith here mentioned al-ahdatha, and al-hadath could be of two types. Hadath or qisman, hadath al-akbar wal-asghar. Hadath al-akbar requires al-ghusl, and that to be discussed further. And that, for example, regarding a person who have sexual relationship, that requires hadath al-akbar, and the person require al-ghusl. Also, the second type is al-asghar, where the person require only perform al-wudu, such as the person who have passed wind, or the person may have defecated. Then for the person to renew and to be in a state of tahara, he requires to have to perform al-wudu. Then I mentioned hatta yatawadda, indicating that this type of hadath is relating to al-asghar. That this hadith is relating to hadath al-asghar, as I mentioned, hatta yatawadda, until the person perform al-wudu. So it shows regarding what is required is this case is concerning al-hadath al-asghar, where the person doesn't require to perform al-ghusl. They mention here regarding this particular hadith, then it shows regarding that a discussion between the ulama, is a person required to be in a state of wudu when is ready to perform salat immediately before he performs salat, or any time that after al-hadath, at any time. So the qawl al-raji, that the person can perform al-wudu at any time. It is not a requirement that the person have to do it immediately before salah, but at any time that is in a state of ghayr tahara, then the person can perform al-wudu. They mentioned here regarding concerning this hadith, and the shahid of the hadith, that this hadith is to indicate, or to is a dalil regarding that is a requirement for the one who wish to perform a salah, that he must be in a state of tahara, and this is one of the requirement. So it's not the only requirement, but one of the requirements, the person must be in a state of tahara. Also they mentioned that from this hadith, that mentioned that had the hadith mahmul, that is also hadith is to be understood or to be taken regarding ala tarik al-wudu bighayr al-wudu. Concern the person that this hadith is applied to the person that the person who is required, the person who tarak al-wudu, the person who left away wudu without any valid reason. As you might find in certain cases, the person is not required to perform wudu, but rather the badal, which is tayammum. So this concern, the hadith is taken regarding the person who has the ability to perform wudu without any excuse from the sharia. Then it's a must upon them to perform al-wudu if they wish to perform salah. So this concerning this particular hadith that is mentioned here, and as mentioned concerning la tuqbal, as mentioned by Ibn Malakin rahimullah, that this hadith concerning la tuqbal regarding that acceptance by way of the sharia requirements, where it means concern a person usul al-thawab, if the person wish to gain a reward for the act, and also for that the person must be in a state of tahara regarding his salah. So those are some of those fawahid that is taken. Another thing they mentioned here regarding this particular hadith concerning kitab al-wudu. So regarding kitab al-wudu, that al-wudu with dammat al-waw, that's concerning al-wudu, the act that is performed, that they mention concerning what is wudu. So wudu, that they mention concerning the different definitions that are given, that a more simplified definition of al-wudu, that they mention huwa isti'mal ma makhsus fi a'dha makhsusa ala sifatin makhsusa. This is al-wudu. Isti'mal ma makhsus, meaning that is the use of a specific kind of water, and that water is water which is pure. So the person using pure water, fi a'dha makhsusa, and those so the person using water over specific limbs of the body, and they are the 4 limbs: the hands, the face, the head, and the feet. So those are the ears to be washed. Then it mentioned ala sifatin makhsusa, in a specific way, where the person regarding the person taken into account regarding an-niyah, and also the tartib wal mawalat. These are the things that goes with that sifatil makhsus. It must be carried out in a particular specific way. So al-wudu is an act of ibadah, and a person must fulfill it according to how it is laid out or explained in the Sharia. No one is allowed to do it other than this way. So that's concerning matters relating to al-wudu. Then he mentioned concerning the next hadith that is mentioned, Aywa.
Chapter 2, the superiority or virtue of ablution. Narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu an, I heard Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, on the day of resurrection, my followers will be called al-ghurrul muhajjalun. Al-ghurrul muhajjalun, from the traces of ablution, and whoever can increase the area of his radiance should do so, i.e. by performing ablution in the most perfect manner.
Aywa. So I mentioned concerning the second bab Fadl al-Wudu, regarding concerning the virtue of wudu. And so this discussion is to highlight concerning the importance and the status of wudu, and regarding concerning that what is the reward for those who perform al-wudu. So I mentioned concerning the hadith again, narrated by Abu Hurairah, and Ibn Malak rahimullah, Ibn Ajrik and others mentioned that this particular hadith, which just been read, regarding the hadith mentioned, Inna ummati yad'una yawm al-qiyamah ghurratul muhajjalin, that my nation will be called on yawm al-qiyamah, and be identified regarding, in this particular fashion, regarding those people of those areas of their body that is glowing. They mentioned regarding concerning min athar al-wudu. So with this particular hadith, this particular hadith is narrated by some mention 7 other companions, some mention 10 other companions. I've narrated this particular hadith with Abu Hurairah anhu. Amongst them that I mention of other Sahabi or Sahaba who have narrated hadith, they mention Ibn Mas'ud, Jabir ibn Abdullah, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Abu Umama al-Bahili, Abi Dhar Ghaffari, Abdullah ibn Busr al-Mazini, and also Hudayfa ibn Yaman. So many other companions have narrated this particular hadith. With me? Naam. So in various books. So of the discussion regarding this particular hadith, that is to indicate or to highlight the virtue of wudu. So I mentioned this hadith in ummati, that Islam have said that in ummati, that indeed my ummah. So the ulama rahimahullah have mentioned regarding that addressing or those who are said to be from this ummah of Muhammad alayhi salam, that they fall into 2 types, or categorized into 2 types, ummat al-da'wah wa ummat al-ijabah. So when alayhi salam mentioned regarding concerning my ummah, then is either at times discussing concerning ummah ad-da'wah, meaning everyone that the message of Islam is meant for them, which is the entire dunya, ins wal jinn. So ummat al-da'wah will include al-ins wal jinn, and everyone on the face of the earth, from his time alayhi salam up until yawm al-qiyamah. They are ummat al-da'wah. Nam, and that ummat al-da'wah, that they will be divided into Muslim or kuffar. Then the second ummah al-ijabah. Ummah al-ijabah, that they are the ones who respond and accepted his message alayhi salam. They are ummah of the ones who accepted the message of the Prophet alayhi salam, and they are the believer. They are the atba. Those are his followers. Nam. So they mentioned regarding the ummati, and in this context, which of those categories are intended? Ummat al-ijabah or ummat al-da'wah? Which is intended? Al-ijabah. So I mentioned aywa. So al-ummat al-ijabah, they are the one intended, as in line with the hadith. So I mentioned that inna ummati yad'una yawm al-qiyamah. In Sahih Muslim, as the hadith also in Sahih Muslim, it mentioned not yad'una, it mentioned ya'tun. So some narration mention yad'un, they'll be called, they'll be addressed. And some mention ya'tun, they will come forward on yawm al-qiyamah. And it mentioned yawm al-qiyamah. So this is concerning of those signs that were somewhat a special sign for the believers, and yawm al-qiyamah, of those things that are particular to the believers. Yawm al-qiyamah, ghurratul muhajjalin, of those who have this type of glowing on yawm al-qiyamah. Nam, from, as I mentioned, min athar al-wudu, from them performing wudu. So of the virtue of wudu that we perform, or the Muslim perform in this dunya, that on yawm al-qiyamah it will be a light for them. It will be a light. As for concern Ghurratul Muhajjalin, I mentioned Ghurra is regarding the face, will be shined. Well, Muhajjalin is regarding concerning other limbs, concerning the hands and the feet, which are those ears that will be washed, the ears that are washed regarding wudu. So the ears that are washed, that they will glow on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Nam, for the believers, and they will be addressed, and that will be their sign on Yawm al-Qiyamah. That it mentioned in Athar al-Wudu, which is to give more clarity. Nam, then it mentioned in the hadith. So the hadith is the show concerning that, the virtue of wudu. Of the ulama mentioned that it is not to be understood the person constantly making wudu. Nam, the person constantly not, the hadith is not to be taken or to be understood that a person constantly need to be making wudu over and over. That's not what is intended. Nam, but by the fact that you're performing wudu, then that is sufficient, as needed. Nam, because you find that some people fall into waswas because they're constantly making wudu. Nam, and that becomes an illness. Or some people do that they're out of, as a form of ibadah, that they want to go overboard and always want to be making wudu, thinking that they want to increase the sign on themselves, so they're making wudu constantly. Not out of waswas, out of going overboard regarding al-wudu. So those things are not what is intended. Then it mentioned min athar al-wudu. Then it mentioned the end of the hadith, the third part of the hadith mentioned, man istata minkum an yutil ghurratuhu falyaf'al. So the hadith, the next sentence mentioned, man istata minkum, the one from amongst you who wishes, who is able, then he should try to expand that area. Nam, that part of the hadith, that there's a discussion between the ulama regarding, as mentioned by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and also Ibn Mulakin rahimahullah kind of somewhat discuss that, but Ibn Hajar rahimahullah kind of indicate that portion of hadith written in English, man istata minkum,
and whoever can increase the area of his radiance should do so.
Aywa. So that part of the hadith, there's a discussion between the ulama, as mentioned by Ibn Hajar, that some of the mentions, Naim mentioned, one of the narrators, that he mentioned, is this actually a statement of the Prophet of Islam or the statement of Abu Hurairah? Nam. So that part of the hadith, there's a discussion, what they call mudraj. Mudraj is where either one of the narrators have mentioned something and it was somewhat taken as part of the hadith. Repeat again what is meant. So al-mudraj is where a statement of someone was included in the hadith, but is not actually a part of the hadith. Clear? So that is mudraj. So that sometimes could be where someone heard something from a sahabi and thought it's a part of the hadith, but it's not a part of the hadith. But they have passed it on as if it's a part of the hadith. Nam? So that's a part of the science of ilm al-hadith, where a person which is concerning that, they mention it is a part of the hadith concerning that, being able to identify what it is mudraj. How to do so? Where is comparing between the other narration of the hadith. So I mentioned over 7 other companions narrate the hadith. And they mentioned that no one have included this from the other narrations. So where this additional statement came from? With me? So that's concerned. So of the thing is to concerning identifying these things, if the person able to compare all the narrations to see is any narration have any additional wording that other narration did not mention. If there's additional wording, at times it could be correct and at times it could be incorrect. But that's a part of the science of ilm al-hadith. Nam, and so you have a discussion. You have Ibn Hajar rahimahullah kind of somewhat highlighted that it is mudraj, possible mudraj, as Naim, one of the narrators, that he mentioned that la adri, I don't know. Is it stated by Abu Hurairah or go back to the Prophet of Islam? He himself was not clear. So you find the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, Sheikh Albani, Sahib al-Targhib al-Mundhiri, that they are more inclined toward that it is mudraj. Nam, and also some of the tullab of and concerning. So this hadith also one of the famous hadith in the book, Bulugh al-Maram, the book Bulugh al-Maram. So basically that also the hadith is mentioned, and you find some of those who made tahqiq of the book, you have that discussion that is mentioned there. But the thing is that there's a discussion regarding that additional statement or sentence. Is it actually from the Prophet Islam regarding man istata' minkum, the one who's able to add to this, then he should increase, or actually same to Abu Hurairah, because there's narration Abu Hurairah that he was of those ones who like to increase. He used to wash his hands up to the elbows, up to the shoulders, to the shoulders. So Abu Hurairah was of those who can somewhat you understand, was of the view that you should increase as much as you can. So you have that discussion, and as mentioned, that some mention that the reality that is also mudraj. It is actually a statement of Abu Hurairah and not the statement of the Prophet of Islam regarding the ending of that hadith. So based upon this, the ulama have taken the view that it is something which is mandub, mustahab, light, encourage for a person at times to increase regarding above those areas, that is the fard areas. And some mention no, because there's nothing to prove this. And what was did by Abu Hurairah is the ijtihad, based upon how you understand the hadith. But from the Prophet of Islam, he didn't go to that extent in making his wudu. So that's from the hadith. It shows regarding those point regarding of those things that the Muslim will be identified with on Yawm al-Qiyamah is from perform the act of wudu. The next matter to discuss regarding this hadith regarding that is the act of wudu, because it mentioned that the Muslim, those from this ummah will present on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, when they are presented on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that they'll have these signs, that they'll have these limbs glowing, shining. So the mentioned discussion is wudu, the act of wudu, something which is of the khasa'is of this ummah. Meaning that did the nation before perform wudu? So something be specific to us, it means that other nations did not do of that thing. So we are being somewhat, the Muslim are this ummah of Muhammad Islam, that we are somewhat on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that we will stand out where the parts of the wudu areas, that they will glow. Is that the same for the nations before? So from the hadith, it's indicating that is something particular to us. So this will be considered to be one of the khasa'is of this ummah, regarding those parts of the limb glowing on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But does that also means that we are the only ones who perform wudu compared to the Anbiya before regarding their nations? Some mention that wudu was for the Anbiya. Some mention that it is particular to us and not to others. And some mention that's not the case, that wudu was of the practice of those before. And they mention regarding concerning the qissa concerning that the one who poked the boy, who was accused of committing zina with that lady, another child, and he poked the boy and the baby and tell the baby to speak and to identify your father. The meaning of the hadith. He said before he did with a right, but he had his monk, he had a little type of place he used to worship. They destroyed, accused him of zina, type of thing because of his. So when he went to the boy, he poked him, but before this, he performed salah. And he performed wudu. So it says, based upon this, it shows concern that the nation before made wudu. So it's not something with particular to this nation. So that's of the issue that is discussed regarding from the hadith. Can it be taken or understood that because of this glowing of those limbs, that wudu is something which is particular to this ummah, but the more correct view, it is something which is from this ummah, but also others before us perform al-wudu. But as for us, we get this special concession regarding our al-wudu based upon this hadith. So from those points, it shows regarding, again, that the ummah, the concerning that hadith studies, as we mentioned before, is a very meticulous study. And the person has to be on point. And a very detailed study. So regarding, and it shows concern that for the ummah, concern that not even that the ulama of Islam, they are constantly reviewing the books of hadith. So a person of the 3rd century, 4th century of Islam may have wrote a book, it doesn't mean that it stopped there regarding reviewing that book. So even the likes of books of Bukhari, Muslim, they have been explained, been checked constantly, and that's concerning the duty of the ulama. And it shows concern that now at times that they will identify certain things, that certain errors that may occur in some of the books of hadith. And that shows concerning is trying to be as precise regarding what goes back to the Prophet of Islam that it stays that it is, and to filter everything. So that's concerning that particular matter. So concerning that, al-mudraj is one of those also sign orders of those within the sense of in the hadith. It takes a person who have ittila al-wasi', the person who have read a lot regarding hadith, and also able to can al-yajma al-riwayat to combine all those different narration on one hadith to can detect that there's an error or not. So the people concerned, the people of hadith, what they have, the effort that they have done, that we should be, as they say, thankful. We should be thankful. So that's concerning that particular hadith. That concerning that particular hadith. So they show concerning again the hadith show the virtue of al-wudu. Show the virtue of al-wudu. Aywa. Hadith.
Chapter
what time
3,
is it?
7:15.
What time was okay, 7:30.
Chapter 3. One should not repeat ablution if in doubt, unless and until he is convinced that he has lost his ablution by having hadath. Narrated Abdullah ibn Yazid al-Ansari radiallahu an, he asked Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam about a person who imagined to have passed wind during the salah. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam replied, he should not leave his salah unless he hears sound or smells something.
So the author rahimahullah mentioned this particular bab as the next bab to be discussed concerning bab la yatawadda min ash-shak hatta yastayqan, that of those things that they made that person not to repeat his wudu until he's certain. So it shows concerning of those principles the ulama mentioned regarding that the ahkam of Islam are the person does things based upon yaqeen, not based upon shak. So the person act based upon things that he is certain of, not to act upon things that he is doubtful of. So al-shak, so the person is somewhat the person is acting upon those things that the person is convinced about, and that applies to different things. That applies to different things where the person that always try to act upon doubt. It could concerning istihara, where the person sometimes may be in doubt regarding did I wash? How much time did I wash that limb? So the person constantly, the person not everything goes back to what you're certain of. In salat, the person in doubt regarding how much rakat I'm in, go back to what you are clear on. What you're certain about. So the person always go back to certainty, and so as to remove that doubt. So that's concern of the principle of Islam, or the concerning of those matter regarding al-qawaid al-shar'iyyah. Then I mentioned regarding the hadith of Abdullah bin Yazid al-Ansari ta'ala anhu, قال أنه شك أو شك إلى رسول عليه السلام الرجل الذي يتخيل إليه أنه يجد شيء في الصلاة. So regarding concern is matter regarding that person who have this type of doubt in his salah. So the person who went to the Prophet Islam and kind of somewhat explained that, having concerning doubt regarding his salah. So he alayhi salam regarding that he felt something in his salat. فقال عليه السلام فلا ينصرف حتى يسمع صوتا أو يجد ريح. That a person should not leave his salah based upon having that type of dimension concerning that. يتخيل meaning الظن. He has these type of thoughts. So the person having these thoughts regarding his salah, did something occur or not occur? So he alayhi salam somewhat gave the person concern لا ينصرف حتى يسمع صوتا أو يجد ريحا. So the person should not leave his salat until you have clearly heard some type of sound or you have smelt something. So those are the things that the person become clear on. Either regarding that concern, the person felt some movements in his stomach, in his bowel. So did something actually came out or not? So the principle that he gave, the Prophet gave the person that not to give the person, and it shows concerning that in not every matter, in every matter we need to ask the detail and everything. Sometimes Islam give us a principle to act upon. So in this, the person said, La yansarif, do not leave the salat, hatta, until you have heard some type of sound, or you have smelled something. So it becomes clear as to what to work with. So the person get a principle as to what to work with regarding if he was to find himself in the same scenario. Nam? So it shows regarding concerns, not concern that of the person getting certain type of principles regarding what are those things to be mindful of or to use regarding how to measure your situation. Did you hear any sound? Did you hear some type of sound? Or a rih, or the person, he smelt something. So that's concerning the hadith, concerns, it shows concerning the person. Also the person, if you're in salat, then the same thing apply. That the person, that if you felt some movements in the bowel, but you're unclear, did something come out or not? So the person he goes with, did I hear anything, any sound? Or that did I smell anything? So any of those is the tool to work with. And if none of those occur, then the person remain in his salah. The person he remain in his salat and ignore what have occurred before. So that's concerning that particular matter regarding of those things. Also from the hadith it shows regarding concerning that hearing of sound regarding indicating regarding passing of wind, and also sound that though concerning that passing of wind, that it nullifies one salah and one wudu. So of those things that nullifies salat regarding concerning a passing of wind. So either passing of wind, the person did at times that passing of wind where there's a sound that goes with it. Or at times there's no sound, but the person, there's an odor that comes with it. Or a combination of both. Nam. So whatever occur, then if it shows concern that that of those things that invite the person wudu, tahara, is passing of wind, and also that also this also invite the person as-salah. So the person who find himself that this will occur in his salah, then the person salat, he doesn't need to make taslim. The person who pass wind in salat, they don't give taslim to end the salat, because the salat is invalid immediately. He just walk out of the salah. Because making taslim for the person who have wudu. Nam. So from the hadith it shows regarding of those things that invite the person at tahara and is passing of wind, and also this will have impact on a person's salah. With that, inshallah ta'ala, takhfif fil wudu. And with that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there and we'll continue next week, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll come, okay. يتعلق بالدرس, what we have said.
So if someone has the feeling that it passed, he didn't smell it, or he didn't hear it also, but he has the feeling that I think I passed. Does that modify the?
If the person have that feeling where perception, and he's mutayakin, he's certain that something did come from him, then he leaves that, even though he may not have smell, or immediately smell, or he didn't hear anything, or immediately smell anything, but within himself he feels certain that something did come out, then he leaves salah. Because that's what he's certain about. But the person of doubt regarding, did I break my tahara? Then that's when the person, he used those two factors. If none of them are found, then he remain in salah. Nam. So the thing that you are certain of, you go with it. The thing that you have doubt on, then you use other factors to assist you. Clear?
Some people also say, okay, they are not sure they've lost their wudu, maybe they went to toilet or something, or maybe they slept, they are not sure. So the person says, okay, I need to make wudu again. Is this wrong? Or should the person just leave it if it's not sure?
So the person said that if the person chooses to have this doubt, and he chooses, to make wudu again, then that's not a problem. That's for him, for that person, maybe for him to remove that doubt, is for him to perform wudu, because the level of shak is very strong with that person. So that person, in that case, to remove any form of doubt, for him to repeat his wudu, then that may be for him most suitable. أي
In relation to Mutlaq al-Hadith, is it only restricted to, مثلا in this scenario, all Sahabi, or can it be anyone from the chain of narration?
So regarding concerning al-Mudraj, so the question regarding concerning Mudraj, it is particular to the Sahaba, or it also could apply to anyone in the Isnad, any other narrator. Yeah, that's the case. So at times it may be few cases, maybe Sahabi, but at times in most other cases it may be other narrators in the Isnad. Nam? So it could be also other narrators in the Isnad who could have added additional wording or additional wording to the hadith. So you do find those. The case is not widespread, but it does occur. It's not widespread, but it does occur. To the extent now you find that books that are particular on that topic. That's concerned al-Mudraj, that have as a thesis, someone have somewhat tried to, you understand, collect as much of that information as possible. Nam, but said it's not a common practice. Nam, but it does exist.
Because I remember from Ibn Salah, he doesn't mention, there was a narration from Ibn Abbas where it relates to saying Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and then it says إذا شئت قم وإذا شئت فجلس كما قال. But they did mention something about classifying as a whole Sahabi, but I didn't really get it. But I'll bring the reference.
Bring the reference so I can see exactly what is discussed. I'm saying that additional wording in hadith, it could fall in several categories. Nam, so at time it could be mudraj, as mentioned, but still doesn't say that mudraj doesn't impact that the hadith is da'if. It doesn't mean that. So let's clarify that first. When I say mudraj, it means that something additional was added, but the hadith itself is still intact and still authentic.
Part of the matan is...
Yes, so part of the matan, and sometimes mudraj could be also with the isnad, with the other narrator, you understand, that is not there. Nam? But in most part, is more common regarding the matan, meaning the text of the hadith, right? Where certain wordings may be added. Nam? So it's... that is added, but it's not actually a part of the asl of the hadith. Nam? Both of the hadith, it doesn't mean, for them to just clarify, that's not a part of the hadith, and that's it. Hey, so that's it.
You'll find it there.
Hey, تفضل. موقوف.
مرفوع and موقوف.
I said that, I said that, and ilm al-hadith, yes, you have something called mawkuf. I said that, we have different things. I said that, there's different things to consider regarding what's this. Study of hadith is a huge area. So you have things that is mawkuf, which is something I said that is the statement of the Sahabi. So this could be said to be mawkuf if it goes back to Abu Hurairah. But the ulama like to separate between what is marfu, going back to the Prophet of Islam directly, mawkuf for the statement of the Sahabi, wal mawqiyah. So everything is put in their own category. Everything is put in its own category. To know exactly who was the person who made that statement. So the thing concerned that the statement of the Prophet of Islam, that nata'abbad, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with those statements from the ahkam that is taken. As for the statement of the Sahabi, is not to the same degree. But as for his statement alayhi salam, ta'abbad, that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with those wordings. So we have to be clear as to what he alayhi salam said and what other people may have said. Aywa. Yeah, we'll come back with that next week, inshallah. Hey, next week, inshallah. No, sir, my system, everyone is different. My system that we can somewhat try to more discuss what is discussed in the lesson, that lesson. You understand? I want to reach those points. regarding other points, they will come inshallah. And we'll go to, depending on we'll discuss those things depending on the amount of information. But it's kind of somewhat stick to what is the topic. That's more my style. You understand? I'm saying in the sense of sometimes concern is not. I've said many times this is not, and I'm talking about myself in particular. You understand? As an example that yes, to be more precise in giving information, because information can easily be spread, especially in our time. So the person, rather than try to answer every question all over the place, sometimes you may know what the person thought, but you don't want to pass things that then you have to come back on it tomorrow. You with me? So my system is ideally what is in front of me in my lesson. Aywa. So that inshallah ta'ala. Aye. One gets the reward.
Yeah, from the time it gets nullified. So for example, I pray Allahu Akbar, then the salah gets nullified. Do I get the reward from when I make the takbir up until it gets nullified?
No, regarding concerning getting reward, those matters, you understand, concern that matter goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Getting reward is a matter goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With me? As for the discussion regarding concern that, is that salat valid? Nam, is the salat in entirety, is it valid? As for being valid, no. As for reward, goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nam, but as for the salat, because the salat is seen as one unit, even though it is divided. So the person from the start through to the end, Nam, for the salat, for example, Dhuhr, you cannot have Dhuhr 2 rakah, then you leave and come back and do 2 rakah. You understand? So it's complete as a unit. So for a salat to be considered to be valid, then everything, all those things have to be in place. If the person started his salah, then lost his wudu, you understand? As for that salat, it's considered to be invalid. As for the reward of what he did, that goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Clear? Aywa. طيب, with that inshallah ta'ala, khalas? You had something? Okay, طيب. وبالله توفيق وهذا السبيل. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.